Heartmind fans and maybe people that are new. I'm Holli. This is the Heartmind with Holli podcast, where I talk all about how yoga and breathwork can start to heal our minds and center it here in our hearts, where really the center of ourselves lies. So many of us today are suffering with mental health, and whether that's on a micro level where it's just grating at our everyday, or whether that's in a huge, big way where it's really severing relationships, severing our ability to connect with people and the land and our environment. So, this I am really wishing and hoping that this podcast, along with many others, but that these conversations starts to help you ground your mind into your body, live from an empowered chakra space. And the chakra system is a huge part of the type of yoga I teach and the yoga healing, breathwork healing that I do. And I want to talk today, it seems appropriate, about intention. So this is a solo episode and we're going to dive deep into what does intention mean? And it's a huge part of the healing process in yoga and breathwork. So grab your cuppa if you want to join me, or maybe you're listening to this while you do some tasks. I'm so glad you're with me. And let's go into what does intention mean and why is it so powerful and why you might want an intention for your year rather than a resolution, although I believe that most people are moving away from resolution in general. This is because resolutions really focus more on outcomes and behaviors, and usually the negative, like I don't want to do something, or I do want to do something that's outside of maybe my capacity or what I'm used to doing. And so it's really that outcome based, which can have its benefits, but I find that those usually with shorter terms tend to do better with those kind of type of resolution goals. Whereas an intention is something very different. And that's what the whole episode is going to be about, is why is that so powerful? So the word intention in yoga is sankalpa. And this intention word in Sanskrit, there's lots of different meanings, and I've seen it even spelled slightly differently with different lineages. But basically, it's talking about a vow or a commitment that you're making. And if you're making a vow and a commitment, then you're making it with something or to something. And often it can be to yourself, but there's also maybe a relationship to, for example, your practice or maybe the universe. So you're vowing to your practice, or you're vowing to the universe, you're vowing to yourself. And this vow means that you are committed to the relationship of that thing. So you're committing in relationship to the intention. So you might have gone to a yoga class where you set intention at the very beginning, and this starts to weave or create an invisible thread between you and whatever that intention is. So sometimes that could be just being present. Sometimes that could be, my intention is to feel better in my body. Sometimes that could be an intention really specific, like I want to um, feel better or start to heal my right hip. It could be really specific like that, especially for a single session, right? Because then you know where you want to take your attention. And we know that this is the big thing about yoga, and it's around a meditation too. Wherever our attention flows, that's where our energy goes. So by setting that vow, you're kind of creating that relationship, energetic relationship between your attention, your focus, and that vow or that purpose, that action that you're wanting to take. So my intention is to heal my right hip. My attention as I flow through the yoga practice will start to go towards my right hip. And I might focus a little bit more on there. More prana is going to go there. And then I might change certain poses or make certain choices in the practice that are centered around that commitment versus anything else. If we come uncommitted, if we come without a vow, then it feels a bit more random. Our attention kind of starts to go pretty scattered, and then we might not get as much out of the practice as we normally would. So one person in a class or a particular sequence could have that intention to heal the right hip, while another one has the intention to bring more energy into my body, to be more present. And so they'll make different choices, and their relationship to that practice or sequence will be slightly different. And their prana is going to, or their energy is going to flow in a different way than the person that's focusing on their right hip. And this is the power of intention, is that your prana or your energy starts to flow toward that intention and that vow. You're directing your efforts, you're directing your energy in that way. And you're starting to create a very intimate and important relationship to yourself, your own being, and a purpose for that energy and direction for that amount of time. So again, you can make the vow or the commitment for an hour class. You can make a vow or commitment for longer. And that's the magic of creating an intention for a whole entire year. If you've never created an intention before, I invite you to really start small. And we do this quite often in our classes. So can I have a commitment for a 15-minute practice, or a 30-minute practice, or a 60-minute practice? And if I keep that intention in my mind and keep that focus in my mind, what happens, right? What happens? And often that's what we're doing in meditation, is it's this vow that I'm going to just sit here and listen, or I'm just going to sit here and observe my thoughts as much as I can. There's an intention. There's a vow to meditate and to sit.
So, in my opinion, the difference between a goal and an intention is a goal, again, is seeking an outcome. It's usually very masculine driven in that way. Whereas, so it's asking, what will I get or what will I achieve? And then the intention is, what will I become, or how am I traveling, and what is my guidepost? What is my North Star? Both can have similar effects and both can be very similar, but they have a little bit of a different way of being within that process. So a goal kind of puts something out in front of you and you're reaching towards it. An intention puts a question and or a relationship within you, and then you're moving from there. That's, in my opinion, the difference. And I think both are useful. Both are very useful in different ways. So the intention asks you, what am I becoming? What do I need or want in this moment? And how am I going to apply my efforts and energy to become that? So become healed in my right hip, become more present. When I start working with clients, I often do a year's intention eventually. Sometimes we just have an intention for the very first 3 sessions. Those 3 sessions for the very first time are really important, and we have an intention that we set. And then we kind of approach that intention in 3 different ways. 1, in just investigating, 2, with yoga postures and practice, and 3, with breath work and inner work, going deeper into the psyche through the breath. And then if I work with clients for a longer term, and or teachers, I work with a lot of teachers with this as well, we create an intention maybe for the whole year. And that's one of the events I do as well. Some people I work more intimately throughout the year with this intention, and some people we just help set that for the year. And what's happening, whether you're doing it for, a month, whether you're doing it for a class, or whether you're doing it for a year, oftentimes what can be really powerful is you make it as succinct as possible. Because if you start to make it really large and really big, then it starts to waver and become pretty scattered again. Your energy doesn't quite know what to focus on. But if you make it really pointed and make it very short and pithy and powerful, then it starts to go in those different ways, but you have a center to ground you and hold you and tether you to a single point. And that can be really the power of a single word intention, or maybe it's a hyphened word or a couple words, but really short. I want to give an example. I posted a little video about this just recently, and I'll keep posting a little bit because it's such a successful story. And I have more than her, but one client, Liz, that I've worked with, she said intentions as we started working with each other in more depth. The first year that we worked with this intention was freedom. And we worked with certain poses with it as well. And this was fish pose that we were working with throughout a segment of time, almost a year. And it was so powerful, and she started to find freedom from her own past and find freedom within her situation currently at home and even with work. And at the beginning, she only could really lift her chest and keep her back, keep her shoulders, keep her head on the ground, and just lift a little through the chest at the very beginning when we started working with each other. By the end of that time, and with that intention of freedom, freedom in the chest, freedom in her body, but she was also finding it outside in her relationships, in her workspace, at her home space, she was finally able to come up into the full pose. The next year, because she found this process so powerful, she kept going. The next year, we started to focus on hope and finding more hope in her life and for her future. And we started to draw more inward with a pose called plow pose, where you kind of, it's pretty intense and it's really difficult, especially, we used to do it a lot as kids, but if you haven't been keeping your spine really supple, it's very difficult to not just put all of your weight on your neck, which can be dangerous. So we had to build a lot of core strength and build a lot of awareness and connection. And we used props to support as well, which is really, can be empowering to find support. And by the end of this cycle, and it might have gone for plow pose a little bit over, but she had been working and working and working, and she was able to do this pose with that intention of hope guiding her and tethering her. So the intention keeps a type of emotional tethering and belief, or even like a motivator, an inspiration for the practice. And then this leads over time to feeling what's capable in your body. For some other teachers and people that I've worked with, some other intentions that I've seen is blossoming. And during this time, a teacher that I was working with that had a year of blossoming had her first child. And there was lots of complications in having this child. And she has been very brave with having this child for lots of different reasons. And that word really supported her going through the birthing process and the pregnancy. And it really helps the mind to come back and come home to something when we might feel anxious, or we might feel depressed, or we might be in a really intense process like pregnancy, or like a job change, or like leaping into creating a career that is something different than you thought maybe your career path would be. All of these reasons, you need something for your mind to focus on to support you. And I've been doing this, oh gosh, I've been doing a one word intention for the year. I don't know. It's got to be about a decade. And what really I find fascinating and what I love, love, love about it is I know that I'm having a conversation now with the universe, or with creation, with whatever you want to call it, spirit. Every time I make this intention throughout the year, I start hearing it, seeing it. It's like those things, like they say, I forget the psychology term, but when you start wanting to buy a car, you start seeing different, models that you like or want and all of that. This happens when you start to focus your mind on a certain intention. So I'll give you an example. One year mine was prosperity, and everywhere the symbol for that was a diamond, like how pressure creates this gorgeous, beautiful, precious thing. And it, for me, was a symbol of prosperity. And I didn't remember it at the time, but some card sets that I was working with, it literally had as one of the cards someone walking up a ladder towards a diamond, and the card was all about prosperity. And that kept showing up. When I had my website that year, I had my website built for my yoga therapy, and I didn't say anything about a diamond, but the website designer just put a diamond on the homepage. It just kept showing up. And the other thing that happens is you start asking, what does that even really mean? And what does that mean for me? And how do I value this word, and in what ways? And how in my relationships, my relationship to my daughter, the relationship to my partner, my parents, my business, my clients, it starts popping up and having a conversation with you to start building your belief system of what you know and treasure about that particular thing. And that's why I say it's a relationship that you're starting to build with that entity, because all words have an energy, right, about them. The word presence means has a certain kind of tone to it versus maybe faith. And that has a certain kind of energy to it that you're seeking and wanting to know about. That's different than presence. One's a little bit more grounded. It's, starts to bring you more down in energy, whereas faith starts to kind of expand you and start to kind of surrender a bit more. There's so many different words that we could choose for this intention that will start to lean our energy and our thoughts towards a certain way. And that's the beauty of this process, really, is that you start to have intentional conversations with spirit, with your community, with your family. And it could be even only within yourself. You start journaling or you start having those thoughts in the shower, in your yoga practice, in the car when you're on a drive by yourself. These things will start to percolate. And then it starts to shape your decisions a little bit. Well, am I going to let my anxiety or let XYZ run the show? Or what would my relationship with faith or my relationship with this intention, how would that shape this decision if I were to relate to it with this intention? And it becomes, again, not only a tethering point, but then a guiding light, a North Star for your whole year. Now, I want to say this is just a powerful tool. It's not the whole shebang, okay? You can't just set an intention and expect everything to work out. It takes effort, okay? That's the point. Like, there's still effort that is going towards that intention and being directed. So it does take practice. It does take, energy to redirect thoughts, to have those conversations. It does take the willpower of you meeting the moment. And it's not going to be like this magic wand. It's not an affirmation. And often people think, even affirmations can be bypassing and a magic wand. It's not an affirmation. It's something different than an affirmation. I want to make that very clear. It is simply a focal point, but you have to put in the effort of directing your energy with that focal point and that commitment, that relationship that you're making. So it does take practice. It's not going to erase environmental situations, okay? So it's not that magic wand type, way of thinking that the mind can change everything. But it can start to shift your internal environment. And I do believe that over time, this starts to shape and have a relationship with our external environment. And then I just want to say, you can do this really simply by just asking yourself, if my life had a direction word this year, what might it be? If I wanted to take my life in a direction, what would a single word encapsulate with that? And that becomes your compass for the year. But there's a whole process that I've created for myself first, and I did it for myself for several years before I introduced it to a teachers group I run called the Yoga Teacher Collective. And I only did it with them for a few years. Then I started to, and I would do it with trainings, so not a year's intention, but a training intention. And I opened it up, I think it was just last year, to the public more. And this process involves deep reflection and then several questions that help lead us to a single intention. Because that process, you want to make sure it's deeply connected to where you've been and where you want to go. And so I invite you to come to that process this January. And if you missed that, there might be other opportunities if you're watching this later in the year to do that process still. And it can be really powerful whether you're a yoga practitioner, breathwork practitioner, whether you are in the healing space or just needing healing yourself, whether you're a yoga teacher or not a teacher and just practicing. It's really a way to focus your energy. That's the idea. And to have a compass that's really specific for the journey you want to go on for this next year. I'll be talking more about this on this podcast and in other spheres. So please subscribe, share with a friend that might really need to set an intention this year or need a compass for their year. If they're needing healing, share with them this opportunity. And after the ceremonies, there'll be other opportunities too. But I do have the ceremonies in January 2026. In general, every January I do this ceremony. It's a 3-hour ceremony to create your compass for the year. I hope you're traveling well. I have so many amazing guests coming this year. I have several interviews down the pipe. One of them is my dear, dear friend and teacher, Melissa Spamer, who I talk about quite often if you've come to my trainings and things like this. I can't wait to share her more publicly in this manner. And then so many other healers, coaches coming to you in the new year. I can't wait to share these amazing people with you. Travel well, enjoy your prana, your life force, and I'll see you next time.